Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly monumental economic transformation that completely reshaped how we consume media. I mean, if you remember the days of shelling out $20 for a plastic CD just to get your hands on that one-hit song, only to find out the rest of the album was, well, terrible, this is definitely for you. Okay, let's dive into this and explore how the massive shift in the music industry, going from a highly concentrated physical market to the digital landscape we know today, actually changed the very foundation of copyright policy.
Here is our roadmap for today. Part 1, the music oligopoly. Part 2, enter digital disintermediation. Part 3, the piracy panic. And finally, Part 4, rethinking copyright policy. Let's get right into it.
Section 1, the music oligopoly, pre-digital dominance.
Okay, I want you to think back to the late 1990s. Before you could literally carry a million songs in your pocket, the music industry was this incredibly physical, scarcity-based business, and it was controlled with a seriously tight grip. Just look at this number, 85%. At the dawn of the year 2000, that was the staggering share of the $13.7 billion US music market controlled by just 5 massive distributors. If you bought a CD back then, the chances are overwhelming that your money went straight to one of these gatekeepers.
And those gatekeepers were known as the Big Five: Sony, Universal, BMG, Warner, and EMI. Together, they functioned as a highly concentrated oligopoly. Because their market share was just so massive, no music retailer out there could realistically survive without carrying their catalogs. And they knew it. They used this immense leverage to dictate exactly how music was sold and, more importantly for us, exactly how much it cost. So the crucial point is how they actually enforced all this control. Between 1995 and 1996, these companies rolled out these strict minimum advertised price, or MAP, programs. Basically, if a retailer wanted cooperative advertising funds from the label, they couldn't advertise a CD below the distributor's strictly set price. And get this, that applied even if the retailer paid for the ad entirely out of their own pocket. If a retailer dared to advertise a discount, they faced severe penalties, losing all their advertising funding for 60 to 90 days. As federal investigators would later argue, it was essentially an illegal price-fixing scheme just disguised as a marketing policy. And man, was it incredibly lucrative for them. The Federal Trade Commission concluded that this MAP scheme cost consumers up to $500 million. By halting retail price competition, the label stabilized prices at these artificially high levels. On top of that, they practically eliminated the single track from retail stores altogether. We all remember the pain of being forced to buy an expensive, full-length album just to get the 1 or 2 songs we actually wanted to listen to.
As documented in this WilmerHale Antitrust Bulletin from fall 2000, the FTC investigated this conduct, and they really didn't hold back. They found these MAP programs were unreasonable vertical restraints of trade. There was absolutely no plausible efficiency justification for them. Basically, there was no benefit to the consumer whatsoever. It was just a pure abuse of market power to maintain those sky-high prices.
Moving on to Section 2. Enter digital disintermediation, the technological earthquake.
Right as this oligopoly was hitting the absolute peak of its power, a technological earthquake struck. We call this process digital disintermediation. Now, I know that's a pretty heavy piece of jargon, but it basically just means cutting out the middleman. Digital files and the internet drastically reduced all those costs associated with manufacturing and shipping physical CDs. It fundamentally undermined the market power that the Big Five relied on to survive. And this brilliantly illustrates the night and day difference between these two eras. In the pre-digital era, we had a strict scarcity model. High costs, physical CDs, gatekeeper labels, and artists only seeing about 15% of the revenues. But the digital era brought in an abundance model, declining costs, digital files everywhere, and most importantly, consumer sovereignty. The consumer finally had a choice again, which led directly to the triumphant return of the single track.
The benefits of this new ecology were immediate, and they were massive. Digital distribution totally destroyed that harmful monopoly structure. It dramatically lowered barriers to entry, which led to a massive boom in freelance artists releasing independent music. Plus, it expanded this concept of feels-like free sampling, allowing consumers to experience and discover huge amounts of new music, which ultimately stimulated a much more vibrant cultural landscape for everyone.
I absolutely love this quote from Jeff Mayfield at Billboard, reflecting on the launch of iTunes back in 2003. He noted that digital downloads would restore the voice of the consumer that has been lost since the labels have practically abandoned the retail availability single. Technology finally gave consumers exactly what they wanted, exactly when they wanted it, without that crazy artificial markup.
Section 3. The Piracy Panic, a False Villain.
As physical sales started to plummet, record labels went into overdrive. They launched a massive narrative campaign claiming that unauthorized file sharing was entirely to blame for their shrinking revenues. But I have to ask you, was piracy actually the real threat destroying the music industry, or was it something else entirely? Just think back to those forced album bundles we were just talking about, and consider what happens when you finally give people the ability to buy just one single song.
Well, when you look at the empirical reality, analyzed by the Consumer Federation of America, or CFA, a totally different picture emerges. The labels loudly claimed rampant piracy was destroying sales, but the CFA findings show the impact of unauthorized file sharing was vastly overestimated. The real driver behind the decline in physical revenue? It was iTunes and the unbundling of albums. Consumers weren't just out there stealing music. They were finally able to buy just the single track instead of shelling out $15 for a whole CD.
To summarize the CFA's conclusion here, digital disintermediation, not piracy, wrung out the excess profits of that old system. The report argues the market didn't collapse at all. It simply moved to a much more efficient, consumer-friendly equilibrium. It was a market correction, not some fatal robbery.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, Rethinking Copyright Policy, the Path Forward.
How we understand this history completely dictates how we govern media going forward. According to reports from the National Research Council and the Department of Commerce, copyright policy really has to balance two main pillars. First, private incentives. We have to ensure creators are actually rewarded for their work. But second, and honestly equally important, are public benefits. This means promoting creativity through fair use, ensuring economic efficiency and technological innovation, and critically controlling market power so we prevent monopolies from extracting unfair profits.
Now, a key tool for maintaining this tricky balance has historically been compulsory and collective licenses. These are frameworks designed by Congress to overcome the basically impossible transaction costs of negotiating every single time a song is played on the radio or streamed on the internet. They allow for mass market distribution, where listening feels like free to the consumer. And this is totally essential for creating a shared culture and expanding access, all while still making sure the artists get compensated indirectly.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark warning issued by the Consumer Federation of America. Given the historical abuses by the major labels, the price fixing, the forced album sales, strengthening the monopoly power of dominant incumbents under the guise of stopping piracy actually threatens to completely stifle the dynamic, innovative development of the entire digital ecosystem.
As the Supreme Court has noted, the limited scope of a copyright holder's monopoly is completely intentional. It reflects a balance upon the public interest. The ultimate aim here isn't just to maximize corporate profit, it's to stimulate creativity for the general public good. The rights of the copyright holder must not become a weapon used to block technological progress.
Which leaves us with a critical question to ponder as we watch new media sectors, from ebooks to streaming video, navigate these exact same waters today. Will future copyright laws be used to protect entrenched monopolies from competition? Or will they adapt to promote innovation, efficiency, and consumer progress? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions, and I'll see you next time.